Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Dan Pugh.
And I'm Shauna Harrison. Each week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. My friend thought she was going to get into the college program that she wanted. She felt like this rush of hope and excitement when she first heard back from them. But then the news changed and the moment kind of slipped away.
Oh.
Yeah. So I feel like that's like this strange sort of beauty almost behind a flash in the pan.
Oh, so like there's this whole big, because there's kind of that little, boom, everything looks great. And then it's like just
rush
fizzles.
of things.
Yeah, it fizzles out, It's like, oh, it just fails,
Like, never mind.
Yeah.
So, according to Oxford English Dictionary, the figurative use of the phrase flash in the pan means, quote, to fail after a showy effort, to fail to go off, end quote. The word in the phrase that really carries the meaning is flash. It started being used in English around the mid-1500s. According to Oxford English Dictionary, flash means, quote, literal, a sudden outburst or issuing forth of flame or light, a sudden, quick, transitory blaze. Figurative, an abortive effort or outburst, end quote.
Oh, wow. So flash is literally, even before flash in the pan, flash just meant that same thing. Like it was something that started and then just like stopped abruptly.
Yes, but because
maybe not quite as
flash
showy,
of
but
light, but then also, yes, with an effort. And it's a little bit hazy, but as far as when flash in the pan, kind of turned into a thing. It's because that's what it is in the 1500s.
Right.
In the 1566 work, Palace of Pleasure by William Painter, we find an example of this. Quote, "Astound like one that had been stroken with a flash of lightning," end quote.
All right. So like that flash right there. Okay. Yeah.
So Painter's work is a collection of tales full of like wit, social commentary, healthy dose of cynicism, and really pretty good storytelling. The collection consists of translations with slight adjustments into English from older tales of the continental European region. His work had a hand in inspiring future authors and playwrights like the well-known William Shakespeare. And we're going to delve a little bit more into this in our behind the scenes, which airs every Friday on Patreon, which you can find by visiting patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
Okay. You said it was fuzzy about when flash in the pan started. I feel like it could have potentially existed prior to the 1560s, right? Because I'm not 100% sure. We're going to find out where flash in the pan comes from. But my understanding is it comes from primers in a pan for like firearms. And firearms started in like the 900s. So before English started. So like that's my... So I don't know. I mean, like I guess I would think that this kind of a concept could predate English even, but obviously we don't speak other languages, and nor do we research in those languages, so that is outside the scope of what we could talk about here. But I am curious what you have for potential origin stories here.
Yeah. So in this case, the verifiable evidence for the word flash itself is around the 1500s. So that's really where that came in. So
it probably wouldn't have. So we wouldn't have flash in the pan prior to the 1500s, but we could have had the conceptual thought of like something starting,
like the
showy,
false
and
start
then
kind of,
All right, cool.
Now we have that keyword flash, but what's the origin of the phrase flash in the pan? That's the title of Gary Martin's article on phrases.org.uk. He discusses a rather popular theory about the gold rush. Let's hear from the expert himself. Quote, "There's reason to believe that this phrase derives from the Californian gold rush of the mid-19th century. Prospectors who panned for gold supposedly became excited when they saw something glint in the pan, only to have their hopes dashed when it proved not to be gold, but a mere flash in the pan. This is an attractive and plausible notion, in part because it ties in with another phrase related to disappointment. It didn't pan out. Panning out can be traced to U.S. prospectors and was used in that context by the early 20th century. For example, Paul Haworth's Trailmakers of the Northwest, 1921. The colonel had told them that a cubic foot of gravel would pan out $20 in gold. Nevertheless, gold prospecting isn't the origin of a flash in the pan. The phrase did have a literal meaning. That is, it derives from a real flash in a real pan, but not a prospector's pan. End quote.
Okay, that's good because I was like, it can't be the mid 18th century because I know I've seen this in the 1700s.
Yeah, definitely before that.
But then suddenly I had to ask the question with like, I know I've seen it in the 1700s when I was researching other things, but then I'm like, did I see it in a literal usage and I attribute it metaphorically?
Right.
Or was it a metaphorical usage? And now I don't remember. It's been a little bit since I've seen this phrase, and so I'm like, I don't know. But okay, cool. I'm glad I have heard the panhandling one, and I think I just dismiss it in my head because I know that the phrase was around before the gold rush of the 1800s in the United States. So
Right.
or what it wasn't really the United States. It was other people's lands that the United States later stole.
Yeah, we can't say California. People were calling it California at that time, at least, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I did not mean to contribute to the colonialist view of history that was not in the United States.
Oxford English Dictionary provides the literal usage of the phrase "flash in the pan" as, quote, said of a gun when the priming powder is kindled without igniting the charge, end quote.
Okay, yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah. So misfires were a common issue with early firearms. It happened because in flintlock firearms, the gunpowder in the small pan is ignited by a spark from the flint striking steel. If the spark lights the powder in the pan, but the flame doesn't reach or ignite the main powder charge inside the barrel, due to damp powder, poor powder placement, or a blocked touch hole, the gun doesn't fire properly. It produces a literal flash in the pan, but no shot. An early usage of the phrase is found in Elkanah Settle's 1687 work, Reflections on Dryden's Plays. He provides a review and commentary on some of the works of John Dryden, which is a bold move. Here's an excerpt. Quote, if cannons were so well bred in his metaphor as only to flash in the pan, I dare lay an even wager that Mr. Dryden durst venture to see, end quote.
All right.
So in this, Settle is saying that if Dryden's metaphors were like cannons that only made a harmless flash but didn't actually fire, then it would be safe enough for Dryden to go to sea, even with those weapons around. So this is a sarcastic jab at Dryden's style, implying that it's like all noise, no substance. This is a pretty scathing review, I feel like.
Yeah, no, back in that time frame, that would have been like a massive burn.
Right. Yeah.
Have to get him some ointment for that burn.
So the other thing about it is that's definitely figurative. That's not a literal usage.
Right.
So this flash in the pan, the earlier references of it, there are some that are literal or it's kind of hard to tell, but these ones in the 1600s are definitely figurative. The works of Thomas Browne, serious and comical in prose and verse, were published in 1778. Our phrase is found in the poem A Satire on Marriage. Quote, if at night you're unactive and fail of performing, enter thunder and lightning and bloodshed next morning. Cries the bone of your side, thanks, dear Mr. Horner. This comes of your finning with crop in the corner. Then to make up the breach, all your strength you must and labor and sweat like a slave at the galley. Yet still you must charge, O blessed condition, though you know to your cost you've no ammunition. Till at last, my dear mortified tool of a man, you're not able to make a poor flash in the pan. End quote.
Wow, that is very crass.
It's so crude.
Wow.
And clever.
That's on par with some of the graffiti at Pompeii.
You're right.
Like, it's just, yeah, I mean.
And I was like, wow, tool of a man. I didn't know people were saying that back then.
Woof. Yeah, wow. Okay. All right.
So, yeah, there you go. And I think we can just read into that what we will.
I have to say I do love the transition in the late 1700s and early 1800s when we started seeing more and more people who were willing to put what would have then been called vulgar language. You know, it wasn't the language of the aristocracy. You know, it wasn't the language of the gentry. It was the language of the common people. And we start seeing more and more of it in the late 1700s and early 1800s, even into like Francis Gross's work with the Dictionary of the Vulgar Tongue.
Yeah.
So, and I love being able to see that because you get to see some of the less couth side of language that hasn't survived in other kinds of works, you know, at least in English. So
Right.
I do like this time frame in history where you start seeing more and more of these, you know, and are able to see how the language enough to be able to put together that the language might have been used in this way.
Right. And there are a couple of phrases in this one that I was surprised to see in a work from that time frame that I thought was like even the thunder and lightning, you know, was kind of it's like
Yeah.
that's not talking about storms, you know. so,
Right.
so yeah, it was really interesting to read. In the Portland Gazette and Maine Advertiser, October 17th, 1814, out of Maine, USA, we find the following article. Quote, Blaze of eloquence and patriotism. As the General Court is in session, we have a right about this time to expect another flash from the pan of John Holmes. It is said that sometime this week he will deliver in the Senate chamber an immense speech, embracing in one cluster all the various beauties of fancy and powers of argument that have decorated the columns of the Boston Patriot, Chronicle, and Yankee during the last 3 months. The speech will probably be his greatest effort, for his own election to Congress may depend on it. End quote. So yeah, people were. I liked that another flash from the pan of John Holmes. They're like basically he's going to give a really good speech, and then that will be the end of it.
Right. Well, that is, as far as I can tell, still how the United States Congress operates.
You know, fair. Well, next we go to the Kansas Agitator, dated December 29th, 1890, out of Kansas, USA. Quote, the farmers and laboring men have a set of ideas that are held by individuals in political society at large. If these ideas are properly reduced in the crucible, the great political party of the immediate future may result, or, which is not improbable, the new party, if not a mere flash in the pan, may influence both the old parties and impress itself thus on the legislation of the future, without destroying either of the great existing organizations. End quote. Oh, so while we've seen attempt after attempt to form a third party or more in the U.S. with an equivalent following to that of the two primary parties, most of these have not been successful. Individually, they would mostly be labeled as a flash in the pan.
Yeah, it's certainly true of the 1900s and 2000s for sure.
Yeah. In the October 26, 1916 edition of the Daybook out of Illinois, USA, we find the phrase in the sports section. Quote, although the practice of Yale, Harvard, and Princeton being defeated by small teams has become rather common in late years, one of the greatest surprises in football history came when the little Tufts College team defeated Harvard. Just to show that it was not a flash in the pan, Tufts came back the following Saturday and held Princeton to a 3-0 score, the game being saved to the Tigers by Tibbetts' drop kick in the final period. The next week, Tufts smashed Boston College 13-0. End quote. The next excerpt comes from an article by Cynthia Lowry, published in the Lincoln Times out of North Carolina, USA, September 8, 1955. Quote, how fickle are the nation's small fry? Millions of dollars are riding on the answer to one question. Is Davy Crockett a real buckskin hero or a flash-in-the-pan idol the nation's youngsters will abandon as fast as they grabbed him up? End quote.
Is this, wait, is
title?
this the like David Crockett of
The
lore and fame?
That Davy Crockett.
Who famously had been dead 100 years at this point?
So the title of that article, it sounds a bit like it could be in today's media. And it was, is Davy Crockett real hero or flash in the pan idol?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah. There you have it.
We also know that he preferred to be called David. It was a biographer later that called him Davy, and he did not really like that name. I learned that from you on this very show, in fact.
That's true. He wrote about himself quite a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
So this was at a time in the 1950s. His popularity was like definitely on the rise. There were some other, like kind of cowboy types, and he was really popular. The hat, and everything for young men.
Right, his buckskin hat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he famously died in the Battle of the Alamo. As a native born-bred Texan, I think it's important to remind everyone of the Battle of the Alamo.
So that we don't forget.
Yeah. I feel like I had to take Texas history like 6 or 7 times in my course of public schooling in Texas.
Pretty sure I took it in Kansas.
That tracks. Texas does write most of the history books, or most of the textbooks, I should say. So yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me if other people had a lot of Texas history built in.
Yep.
Texas controls a lot of that.
Yeah.
Texas, it's like the America of America.
The phrase was used in an article discussing music titled Top Tunes Dum Dum by Harry Backus. The article was published in the teen section of the July 14th, 1961 edition of the Evening Star out of Washington, D.C., USA. Quote, Little Brenda Lee, who was called a flash in the pan after her first success, has produced one hit record after another ever since. End quote.
Yeah, I mean, she has a pretty popular song that is still sang to this day during Christmas, too.
So clearly she proved them wrong.
Yeah.
And it sounds like if you're, trying to become famous or whatever, and somebody calls you a flash in the pan, you'll be just fine.
So he wrote this in 1961. Yeah. Who was called a flash in the pan after first success. Okay. Yeah. And so he's saying that she just keeps putting them out. Yeah. Because I was going to say Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree came out in the late 50s.
And like that first success, then they were like, oh, it's just, it's a flash in the pan. She's not
Well, that wasn't her first success, but yeah. I mean, like definitely, I don't even, it basically, it is now a Christmas standard, Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree. I don't think it quite was then, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, apparently it topped the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 in 2023, making Lee the oldest artist ever to top the charts and breaking several chart records.
Amazing.
That was after the change from only new albums making the Billboard Hot 100, and then they started accepting like streams of digital stuff so that it would be more like it was always intended. What are people listening to now?
Right. And they're listening to Brenda Lee.
Well, at Christmas, that's also how we saw the resurgence of Ms. Mariah Carey.
Yeah, that's very true. We have several modern uses to cover, and we are going to get to those right after we say thank you to our sponsors.
This episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons on Patreon. And the cool thing about Patreon is it is 100% free to join the Bunny Trails community. We have new things every weekday on the feeds. On Mondays, we have a conversation about what movies, shows, books, podcasts, and whatever else everyone is enjoying. Tuesdays see early access to the week's podcast. Wednesdays have all the links, books, songs, and other content mentioned in the week's episode. Thursday has patrons-only polls. And Fridays are our lightly edited, behind-the-scenes video featuring all the cut content, goofs, and bonus facts you could imagine.
We've got some other pretty cool stuff too, like original digital artwork once a month made by me and direct access to talk with us. No algorithms getting in the way of what we see or don't see. Plus, you can get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe does every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Halsig Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon.
That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
Flash and the Pan were an Australian new wave music group, essentially like an ongoing studio project that was formed in 1976 by Harry Vanda and George Young. They were a production and songwriting team known as Vanda and Young. I love when people put a spin on a phrase like this. One simple word change makes it stand out as something different. So they took in and changed it to and. So Flash and the Pan. And I thought that was clever. Flash in the Pan, Life and Death of an American Restaurant is a 2009 novel by David Bloom. Typically, I would read the synopsis, but I thought it was fitting to read the review provided by Anthony Bourdain, author of Kitchen Confidential, and a bunch of other things he did. Quote, finally back in print, Flash in the Pan is the original, and still the best, reportage on the life and death of an American restaurant, a ground-level view of every phase of its life. From the early, hope-filled planning stages to the last humiliating moments, it's a tragicomic epic of hubris and human folly. Painfully hilarious and even more painfully true. This is a welcome reissue of a restaurant classic that should be read by every culinary and food service student in America and sit comfortably next to Orwell's Down and Out on every shelf. End quote. The article Flash in the Pan was posted on the periodical The Online Photographer on March 20th, 2017. The site states it is edited by Mike Johnston, and this piece was signed Mike and in parentheses, thanks to Jimmy L. Day. It talks about a few products and technological releases in the world of photography. Quote, Flash in the Pan. The company GoPro, currently experiencing contraction and layoffs, looks to be an exaggerated version of the accelerated business cycle typical of today. It's beginning to look a tad like all of digital photography, as we know it anyway, might itself be a sort of extended flash in the pan, but at least it has lasted a good 20 years and will certainly stick around for a while more. GoPro was the hero camera company, just a few years ago. That was a fast transit from latest thing to yesterday's news. Now it's drones, apparently. Relative to flashes in the pan, what's your take on mirrorless cameras with oversized sensors? The big Fuji system and the new little big Hasselblad seem to be the hottest topics in photography right now. Everybody's talking them up, although I feel a little like most of us are teenagers debating whether Lamborghini or Ferrari is better. Is that going to last, though? Are the big, expensive, medium format mirrorless cameras going to saturate their market pretty quickly and move on to being yesterday's heroes, ignite brightly and then disappear in a poof of smoke that would be? Or will they carve out a sustainable niche, thrive and grow, and open up a new migration path away from FF DSLRs? It will be interesting to watch, end quote.
I cannot be in this conversation, and the reason is for exactly as he just mentioned. It's teenagers debating whether Lamborghini or Ferrari is better.
Right.
I would be one of those teenagers who's never been in a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and I'm just spouting words out my rear end or something. So
Right.
I don't know anything about cameras.
Well, I will also say, we have that benefit of hindsight. So this article is from 2017, and some of these things, technologies, like they advance really quickly. Those were Lamborghinis then. Now they're kind of more like I don't know, Jeeps or something. I don't know what's a mid range.
I cannot make heads or tails of any of this.
Okay, so I personally use two different mirrorless cameras.
Is my cell phone a mirrorless camera?
Yeah, it's a strictly digital camera, and I do not think it has a mirror in it. It's just got a sensor. It probably just has a sensor.
I use a mirrorless camera day after day.
So point being, on the mirrorless camera front, they're great. I think fantastic. I have two. A higher end one. It takes incredible portraits, great photos. I use it at events, like every kind of photography, construction and design photography, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And there's one for amateurs that I have also, and I use that one daily. So I don't know. I'm saying they're good. I will say I also have a DSLR. For people who have cameras or understand this means something.
Fair enough.
And I love the DSLR as well. And sometimes I feel like my photos have more depth than they do with the mirrorless cameras. But I mean, there's a mirrorless camera on Hubble, so they take good pictures, Anyway. Technology.
I've heard of Hubble, the
Yeah.
space thing.
That
takes big pictures from far away and also a long time
technology.
ago.
Right.
Somehow, weirdly. Whoa. Whoa, hang on.
Yes.
The Hubble telescope takes pictures a long time ago in a galaxy far away.
I bet it's seen the Death Star.
Oh my goodness. This is a mind blowing moment for me, as I just realized the Hubble telescope was the personification of Star Wars.
All right. Well, not surprisingly, this phrase is a popular title for recipe books. A Flash in the Pan, Simple, Speedy Stovetop Recipes by John Waite was published in 2019. Here's a little bit about the book. Quote, there are opportunities to be found in a fast-paced kitchen environment where exceptional dishes can be rustled up without an oven. Pans and a stove are all you need to feed you, your friends, and family convenience food with class. This book celebrates the simplicity of simple, stunning recipes that can be prepared and cooked on the stove in under 45 minutes. And in true John Waite style, A Flash in the Pan is brimming with interesting and innovative combinations, from marmalade brulee, French toast, and Bloody Mary prawn tacos to sag halloumi and apricot whiskey and honey cheesecake. End quote. Interesting combinations.
I mean, I'd try them all.
Right?
If I knew what a sag halloumi was.
Okay. Maybe you should just try it. See.
What if it's like sheep intestine? It's fine. I eat hot dogs. I can't. I literally have nothing that I'm allowed to say. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. A Flash in the Pan is a painting by Georgia Agaropoulos from South Africa. The work was created in 2019 and is viewable on Saatchi Art. Here's a description from the artist. Quote, inspired by an old shelf in a very old traditional kitchen, it evokes a feeling of nostalgia for the impermanence of our lives, our ways, our traditions, our loves and passions. It all passes away like a flash in a pan. Both vessels featured here were designed to take great heat and be functional in creating hedonistic feasts. But they are on the shelf, unused and abandoned to their original purpose. Now they are ornamental and pleasing in how they reflect light in an otherwise dark corner. End quote. This piece is a grayscale work that depicts two cooking pans on a wooden surface. Another artwork done in a completely different style is an oil on canvas painting by Lana Frey of the Czech Republic titled Flash in the Pan. Lana says, quote, give a person everything he desires, and at the same moment, everything will not be everything. I Kant. End quote. And Kant is spelled Kant, like the philosopher.
Yeah, I think he's quoting the philosopher Immanuel Kant.
Yes.
There. Yeah, I think you're right.
This piece is a pop art style with bright colors that work together to create a portrait of a female. The skin tones are created with varying colors: pink, orange, light blue, lilac. The hair is primarily purple. It's a really bold piece, and the subject's emotion can really be seen in it. Flash in the Pan is a restaurant in Northern Ireland. Here's a bit about it from their Google business page. Quote, Flash in the Pan is a traditional fish and chip shop located in the heart of Bushmills, cooking and serving an extensive menu full of delicious options for our customers to feast on throughout the week. Whether you're popping in for lunch, collecting dinner for the whole family, or simply feeling peckish throughout the day, our team of staff are dedicated to providing the friendliest services, ensuring you are catered to throughout your time here with us. From battered cod and haddock to burgers, kebabs, and sausages, these are simply a few of the appetizing choices available, with something to suit everybody. Having won an award for our fish and chips, it's no wonder we have a reputation all over town for the tasty options available on our menu. End quote. A flash in the pan may sound like failure, but there's something more human beneath it. The phrase holds that feeling of sudden hope, brief glory, a spark that flares before it has the chance to become something more. I think that's what Flash in the Pan is about, the space between hope and permanence. And sometimes, what seems like a flicker is actually the start of something much bigger. That's about all we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon, patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
All right, it is Patrons Poll time. Recently, we asked our patrons, which insulated cups do you prefer? The top choice was the brand Yeti, receiving some 60% of the votes. Hydro Flask had about 20%, and then other generic brands also had about 20%. So that doesn't leave much others for the distant other choices, which were Stanley, Simple Modern, and Owala. Although Stanley has certainly seen a resurgence in the early 20s here. Mary says, quote, "Truthfully, I was a bit addicted to them. I love the designs. I love the ones that keep things hot or cold for a really long time. Finally, my daughter Charlie introduced me to the Iron Flask brand. I ordered 3 because those are pretty and keep things either hot or cold. I have a blue one for kombucha, a yellow fading to red for my coffee, and a tall maroon one for water that is now lost. But I have hope that it will emerge from that safe place. Now, when I want a new one, I remind myself of the Iron Flasks I already own and grab my Starbucks tumbler full of Spice Merchant coffee and head for the door." End quote.
I love it.
I guess whatever you got to do to keep from splurging. That's fair.
Yeah. I do have a Yeti that I received from a sponsor at a work event, and it works quite well. My favorite brand is a company called Rogue and Wolf. They kind of fit my vibe from a style standpoint. I have a tall tumbler and a 32-ounce airtight water bottle. They're cute. They're black with a simple white moon and stars design. But better than that, both of them keep things cold for like 20 hours at least. And okay, I've had the bigger water bottle keep water cold through an entire day trip in Costa Rica, like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And there was still ice in it when I got back to the hotel. So
Well, I have a few Yeti brand cups, which I think work well. They keep ice all day, assuming I use the magnetic lids. I also like that they're sold all over the place. One time I was traveling and I lost a lid because I left it on the food tray at the facility I was at and I dumped it into the dumpster. And by the time I realized it, the lid was so far under other people's food waste that I decided I would spend $10 to buy another one. I know that feels like a lot for a lib, but the other option was digging around in 500 other people's food waste in the hopes of finding it. So, like I said, opted for a replacement here. A quick search showed me an Ace hardware store down the street sold Yeti products, and it was super easy to replace. Now, I will say the Yeti products are a little expensive for my taste. I think all of these are expensive. Like, doesn't matter what the brand is, doesn't matter what the thing is, right? But that being said, I've never used my own money for purchasing any of these except for that one replacement lid. But like I said, that was more about paying to avoid becoming a real life Oscar the Grouch. Every Yeti product I own was either a gift, so someone either gave it to me or they gave me a gift card and I used that to buy one. I also really like my 32-ounce wide mouth hydro flask. That was also a gift card purchase, and that is my de facto refillable water bottle when I am on the go, which is great when I'm traveling. I do a lot of air travel, so there are a lot of places I can take it empty through TSA, and then I can just refill it from a filtered water bottle refill station at pretty much every airport or rental car place that I go to. So it's really nice. I can always keep it refilled, and I always feel like I have something to drink whenever I'm moving around. So
right.
I do think that works out really well.
If I drank water at that rate, I would be like stuck in whatever bathrooms are.
Oh yeah, no man,
like that's insane.
yeah, I know I pee all the time. All the time. All the time. I got to pee right now.
Crazy.
So
Oh
well, why don't we end this show? As a reminder, our silly polls mean absolutely nothing and are not scientifically valid. And patrons of all levels, including our free tiers, can take part. Head over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to take this week's poll. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, remember, words belong to their users. Oh, halloumi is a cheese.